I'd like to go ahead and call to order the Wetlands Board. The responsibility of this board is to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to preserve the wetlands and to accommodate economic activity so as to prevent their despoliation. Mr. Wilson, roll call, please.
Mr. Roadley?
Here.
Mr. Waltrip? Mr. Waltrip is absent. Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. May? Ms. Bowie?
Here.
We do have a quorum.
We have the minutes from the April 9th meeting. Any comments? Sir? Not hearing any. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes from the April 9, 2025 as presented.
We have a motion to approve. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
We now will turn to the public comment period. This period offers a chance for community members to express their opinions. Topics discussed shall not be directly related to the specific public hearing items. To participate, speakers must provide their name and address for the record. Anybody care to make up an overall public comment? Not seeing any. We'll then proceed to the public hearings. The outline for tonight's public hearings will be a staff presentation followed by any questions or clarifications from the board. Then the public hearing will be open. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. Presentations before the board are subject to time limits. After everyone wishing to speak has done so and discussion on the board is concluded, the public hearing will be closed. Ms. Grogan will take the first case.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Emily Grogan, Watershed Planner, presenting WJPA 25-0012. Mr. Rich Calvert of Calvert Marine has applied for a wetlands permit on behalf of Mr. Richard C. and Ms. Jamie L. LaBianco for the construction of a bulkhead on property located at 5034 River Drive within the Diaskin Creek watershed. Here we have the subject parcel outlined in blue, along with that Diaskin Creek watershed boundary outlined in yellow here. In June of 2021, the bulkhead located at 5032 River Drive failed due to unauthorized filling of the slopes and resulted in a slope failure. This damaged a portion of the existing bulkhead located at 5030 River Drive, damaged the entire bulkhead and slope at 5032 River Drive, and damaged a portion of the existing bulkhead and slope at 5034 River Drive. This slope failure also caused a significant amount of sediment to erode into the Diaskin Creek, and the existing house at 5032 River Drive was subsequently condemned. During that time, staff met with various agencies and owners of the properties to discuss the remedy of the situation. Existing conditions for 5034 River Drive include a failed bulkhead and significant erosion due to the slope failure at 5032 River Drive. Approval under WJPA 23-0013 was given for installation of a bulkhead along the adjacent properties located at 5030 River Drive and 5032 River Drive, which the proposed bulkhead for 5034 River Drive will be tying into. A case for the same proposal was heard and approved by this board at its November 14, 2024 meeting under WJPA 24-0023. This application has been submitted due to conflicting opinions regarding vegetated wetland impacts. The applicants are of the opinion that there will not be any vegetated wetland impacts. Staff believes there will be 200 square feet of vegetated wetland impacts. Therefore, staff will bond the amount of wetland mitigation and make a site visit during the growing season 1 year post-construction to determine if there have been vegetated wetland impacts. We have the existing topography here. This is the most recent aerial photography, along with, as you can see, the slope failure and the bulkhead failure. This was the previous site plan that came before the board back in November. It's the exact same proposal as what's before you tonight, just again, the only difference is the dispute over vegetated tidal wetland impacts. And then this is the cross-section from the previous submittal. Again, same thing. This is the newly submitted one. I marked it up differently just to kind of differentiate between the two. So you have mean high water, mean low, that proposed bulkhead in orange, and the adjacent bulkhead to the left here that it will be tying into, along with the existing bulkhead on this adjacent property that will remain and tie into it. And then the cross section, and then some recent site photography. I could not locate the recent site visit photography that we did have, but it looks exactly the same with slightly more vegetative growth, given that it is spring now. So that's the adjacent bulkhead that'll be tying into down there. You can't totally see it due to the brush, but there's a string kind of showing that line. And then looking to the right, again, the existing bulkhead down this way that it'll be tying into, which you'll see it better in another photo here shortly. Just kind of showing the current slope failure, and then looking straight down at possible vegetated wetland impacts. And that line or string I was talking about, you can faintly make it out here where it's kind of showing where everything's going to go. And then that is the existing bulkhead to the right here on this property that the proposed bulkhead will also be tying into. And then just another shot back to the left showing where that alignment's going to be. All reasonable mitigative efforts, including alternative siting, which would eliminate or minimize wetland loss or disturbance, must be incorporated in the proposal, and the proposal must clearly be water dependent in nature, and the proposal must demonstrate clearly its need to be in the wetlands and its overwhelming public and private benefits. Staff recommends approval for this project, and if the board wishes to approve, we recommend the following guidelines. The applicant must obtain all other necessary local, state, and federal permits. All development activities located in the special flood hazard area shall comply with the Article 6, Division 3 floodplain area regulations of the James City County zoning ordinance and receive all required approval and permits prior to commencement of such activities. A surety of $8,000 to guarantee mitigation of a possible 200 square feet of vegetated tidal wetland impacts prior to the issuance of a building permit will be required. And the wetlands permit for this project shall expire on June 11th, 2028. But if an extension of the permit is needed, a written request needs to be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than April 30th, 2028, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Questions?
Clarify the discrepancy between the presence or absence of vegetated wetlands.
So the applicant is of the opinion that there are no vegetated wetland impacts. They did have VIMs come out to the site twice, I believe once in November and once in December. The letter from them is included in the application packet online. Staff does believe there's a possibility that there would be tidal vegetated wetland impacts. Just to ensure that that doesn't happen, we're requesting the surety be put in place for long-term post-construction observation.
So we're not requesting mitigation for the impacts? Or we
We're not asking them to purchase any tidal wetland credits like we were previously. We're just asking for a surety, and surety that is kind of an umbrella term for different routes they can take. So we're willing to work with the applicant for whatever best suits their situation, but we're not specifically asking them to purchase tidal wetland credits.
The applicant agreed to that?
I haven't heard anything otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
And the slope that's there is the after failure slope, meaning it's not, you know, a cliff like it was before. So I guess my question is there any issue with the existing slope in terms of erosion?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, they'll be grading it back and filling to mitigate the current situation.
Further questions? And if the applicant or the owner, do I need to open the public hearing? Public hearing is open. If you could state your name and address.
My name is Richard Calvert. I'm with Calvert Marine. I am the agent for this project for the LaBiancos. I prepared both permits for this application. As Emily spoke earlier, this is the second time we've been before the board with this case. I think you guys might have remembered it. We do take exception to the surety bond of $8,000 because there are no wetland impacts. That's why they aren't shown on the drawings. VMRC agrees that there are no wetland impacts with the installation of the new wall. They're putting the bulkhead in by barge in the water. The contractor is Crofton Construction Services. They're bringing in a 100-foot barge and a 70-foot crane to drop these sheets in. It's the least imposing method of installing a bulkhead of this nature. It has no tiebacks, so there's no need to go into the yard at all. If they came in and did this by land, there would be a tremendous disturbance because they'd have to backfill and then bring equipment in to do that. So they chose this very expensive method to do this. The reason that we don't believe that we should have to do the surety bond because there are no impacts at this time. The VIMS report, when we all met out there on site, they said there were no impacts either. There are pieces of scattered wetlands that have popped up since this occurred back in 2024. Anytime you have a sheer cliff like that, you're going to have things pop up. There's pine trees, there's magnolia trees, there's everything growing in there right now. And there is some Spartina that was mentioned by staff that's on the corner of the lot. That's down probably 20 feet from where the wall's at. The only other wetlands in there that was identified was called woolgrass, and we argued that woolgrass is not a protected species listed in the state code for the state of Virginia. This project's been approved by BMRC, and it's also been approved by the Corps of Engineers. We're just waiting for the county to give us a approval on this matter. Are there any questions that you guys might have for me at this time? And I am curious why you would go against VMRC's recommendation to approve the project, since all the backfilling impacts no wetlands whatsoever.
No, just to clarify, and you can answer it, otherwise staff can intercede.
Okay.
So VIMS, not VMRC. VMRC is the one that said there was a wetlands impact?
No, they said there is no impact. We
So-
have a no permit necessary letter from VMRC on this project.
So the surety to guarantee any mitigation if there is wetlands impact is coming from the staff?
County,
Staff only? Okay.
yes, and it's just another expense that Mr. LaBianca would have to absorb. And this is a very, very expensive project. I'll just say that. Have any other questions for me at this time?
Further questions? Okay.
Well, thank you for this time and for your consideration of our side.
Okay, I'll turn it back to the board. Any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend we hear from staff on, again, the rationale for the surety, given that there appears to be no vegetated tidal wetland impacts.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mike Wilson, Section Chief. Mr. Roadley, we understand that the application says there's no wetland impacts. We believe the applicant, and we are asking for this surety in the form of a bond or letter of credit to guarantee that there would be no wetland impacts. We are unsure with the construction method that that those wetlands identified will not be impacted. And we just wanted that guarantee. We'd be happy to go out and after 6 months, 3 months, look at it again. And then if there were no impacts, we'd just let the letter of credit or bond go. We are not asking for a cash surety. It is not $8,000 worth of Mr. LaBianco's cash. It is a letter of credit or a bond, which the requirements on those are much less stringent from a surety standpoint or cash standpoint.
2 follow-up questions. Given the method of construction and the fact that they appear to be above the limits of wetlands, if that's a correct statement,
Yeah, the wall is above the limits of wetlands. There was questions for, internally whether this application should actually come before this board, the Chesapeake Bay Board, since the application is an extension of a clearly Wetlands Board decision on the previous two properties. We felt it was appropriate to be heard before this board. The
Understood.
impacts, if any, if I may anticipate our question, the impacts to the wetlands would be indirect caused from construction by barge.
Understood. So you answered the first question. The second one is, aren't there other mechanisms, given their response to the surety, for enforcement if there is collateral impact to the vegetated community during construction?
Yes, we could go through the VMRC violation procedure, which, in my opinion, can be onerous and time-consuming. But if that's the board's direction, we could certainly approach it from that direction.
Thank you.
Any other questions from you? Thank you.
Appreciate it. Chairman, would you be kind enough to call the applicant back?
Yes, public hearing is still open.
Mr. Calvert?
Sir,
Understanding staff's response to the question, are you still in opposition to the surety?
yes, sir. I believe that if you had another applicant before you, and this was applicable in their case, you're actually putting a burden on my client, because this is not something that's typically done where there are no impacts.
Understood.
Thank you.
Just wanted to make sure we were clear.
Yes, sir. Thank you for
That
that.
an
too.
impact to the vegetated wetlands will result in an enforcement action.
Well, and there's also notes on the drawings too, that any vegetation that's damaged should be replaced in kind. So they're obligated, if there's any damage to any vegetation, it has to be replaced.
So your intent would be to take your own initiative for remedial action if there's any
If there was
damage.
any action to occur. Right now, we're not even quite sure where they are because it's not really marked. It's so sporadic. We could actually get VIMs out there before we started to help us identify that area as well, too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody care to, from the public, comment further on the applicant? In which case I'll close the public hearing and turn it over to the board for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, understanding staff's clear position and opinion with regard to how they proposed the resolution, and understanding the applicant's agent's position, quite frankly, the granting of the wetlands permit is an administrative shortcut to having to go through the Ches Bay Board, because we technically could say no permit required. There's no impact. But I understand the logic that staff applied in this case. And so I'm willing to make a motion to approve the application minus the surety proposal. That's my thoughts on the matter.
Comments? And can I entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the permit request for Wetlands Board case WJPA 25-0012 at 5034 River Drive as amended to remove the surety requirement.
We have a motion, Mr. Wilson. And
Motion is to adopt without the surety requirement. Mr. Roadley?
Yes?
Mr. May? Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, we have the next case. Is it, do we have two cases on the agenda? Okay, is this Ms. Frazier?
Surprise you, Mr. Chairman?
Looking at one here and I'm looking at two here.
Evening, Chairman, members of the board. Amanda Frazier, Watershed Planner, presenting WJPA 25-0007. Ms. Carla Havens of Mid-Atlantic Resource Consulting has applied for a wetlands permit on behalf of Mr. Robert and Ms. Roxanne Filliger for the construction of a bulkhead on property located at 7242 Odie Drive within the Yarmouth Creek watershed. Existing conditions of the property include a failed bulkhead, platform, and boathouse. You can see the subject parcel outlined here in blue and the Yarmouth Creek watershed boundary outlined in yellow. And this is some recent aerial photography of the property, the topography, FEMA floodplain, and the site plan. According to the submitted drawings, disturbance within the resource protection area for the installation of deadman anchors and tiebacks is to occur 10 feet landward of the canal for a total of 2,100 square feet of disturbance within the RPA. The disturbed area will be restabilized after the project is completed. Should the bulkhead construction also take place from the uplands, a revised site plan must be submitted for review and a possible land disturbance permit may be required. Here is a cross-section of the site plan, and I'll walk you through the existing conditions. Pictures. This is the existing bulkhead and boathouse, and there's a platform just beyond there as well. Looking back in the other direction, looking back towards where that first picture was taken through the boathouse, the existing platform, and then you can start to see the failure here. Looking back the other direction, and then this is the last corner of the bulkhead here where it will tie back into this section. And then a closer photo of the failure. On February 1st, 2025, the Wetlands Mitigation Compensation Policy of the Code of Virginia and Supplemental Guidelines was amended. Virginia, as a Chesapeake Bay program partner, is committed to achieve a no net loss of existing wetland acreage and function in the signatories' regulatory programs. In order for a proposed project to be authorized to impact wetlands and compensate for the wetland loss in some prescribed manner, the following three criteria must be met. All reasonable mitigation efforts, including alternative siting, which would eliminate or minimize wetland loss or disturbance, must be incorporated in the proposal. The proposal must clearly be water dependent in nature, and the proposal must demonstrate clearly its need to be in the wetlands and its overwhelming public and private benefits. If the proposed project cannot meet one or more of the above criteria, the project must be denied or must occur in areas outside of the wetlands. Should it satisfy all three criteria, however, the compensation for the wetland loss is required. The sequence of acceptable mitigation options should be as follows: mitigation bank approved in lieu fee program, permittee responsible on site or in-kind mitigation, or permittee responsible mitigation through off-site or out-of-kind mitigation within the same watershed. If compensation is required, it should be a condition of the permit. Staff has reviewed this application and finds that this project meets the three criteria outlined above. There are 10 square feet of vegetated wetland impacts associated with this project. Staff will require a purchase of 10 square feet of tidal wetland mitigation from a qualified tidal wetlands mitigation bank and proof of purchase prior to the start of the project. Staff has reviewed the above application and recommends approval of the application as presented. Should the board wish to approve the application, staff suggests the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. All development activities located in the specified flood hazard area shall comply with Article 6, Division 3 floodplain area regulations of the James City County zoning ordinances and receive all required approval and permits prior to the commencement of such activities. The applicants must submit proof of purchase of 10 square feet of tidal wetlands mitigation from a qualified tidal wetlands mitigation bank prior to the issuance of a building permit. And the wetlands permit for this project shall expire on June 11th, 2028 if construction has not already begun. If an extension of the permit is needed, a written request must be submitted to the SRP division no later than April 30th, 2028, 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. And I'll be happy to take any questions at this time.
Staff? Applicant or their representative care to comment?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Carla Havens with Mid-Atlantic Resource Consulting, 1095 Cherry Row Lane, Shacklefords, 23156. The proposed structure is 2-foot channel, no more than 2-foot channel word of the existing failing bulkhead. We already have a no permit necessary letter from VMRC because it's a man-made channel. We already have our Corps of Engineers PASDO permit, and we're just waiting on your authorization. As you're standing in the yard looking at the waterway, on the left-hand side, as was pointed out, is that low area where one of the 36 wetlands plants exists. And there's no problem with mitigating for that. The Thomas Tye Wetland Mitigation Bank, which is about $40 a square foot, does have available credits. And the Filicars have no problem paying into that.
Questions?
Thank you. Close the public hearing unless we have anybody that would like to make a further comment. Seeing none, it's closed and we'll open it to the board for discussion.
Fairly straightforward. Bulkhead is failing.
Agree.
Motion?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the permit request for Wetlands Board, case number WJPA-25-0007 at 7242 Odie Drive.
Motion is to adopt. Mr. Roadley,
Yes?
Mr. May,
Yes.
Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Do you have any board considerations? Or any matters of special privilege? In which case I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved?
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm almost retired, and I've been training a team here, Nick Giampa and Jacqueline Wilburn. We've been working together for going on a year now, and you're going to see them, you're going to see more of them, and you're going to see way less of me. So I just wanted to introduce them to you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Carla,
much.
and they have big shoes to fill. So look forward to it.
Part of the success of Carla is presenting clear information concisely, and she knows what we're looking for. So, good. I'll call to order the Chesapeake Bay Board for Wednesday, June 11th. It is the responsibility of this board to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to protect against and minimize pollution and deposition of sediment in wetland streams, lakes in James City County, which are tributaries to the Chesapeake Bay. Roll call, Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Roadley,
Yes?
Mr. Waltrip is absent. Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Mr. May,
Here.
Ms. Bowie. We do have a quorum.
Have the minutes from the April 9th meeting. Any corrections or additions?
None?
Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. It's for April 9th, 2025.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The public comment period, similar to the Wetlands Board, the public comment period offers a chance for community members to express their opinions. Topics discussed shall not be directly related to a specific public hearing item. To participate, speakers must provide their name and address for the record. Anybody care to address the board during our public comment period? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period and move on with public hearings. The outline for tonight's public hearing shall be a staff presentation, followed by any questions or clarifications from the board. Then the public hearing will be opened. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. Presentations before the board are subject to time limits. After everyone wishing to speak has done so and discussion amongst the board has concluded, the public hearing will be closed. First item on the agenda is CBPA 25-0034 at 126 4 Mile Tree.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Amanda Fraser, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 25-0034. Mr. Christopher and Ms. Denise Kylitz have applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the replacement and expansion of a deck, retaining wall, driveway, and installation of a fire pit located at 126 4 Mile Tree within the Riverview Plantation subdivision in the Skimino Creek watershed. The parcel was platted in 1984 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. Here you can see the subject parcel outlined in blue and the Skimino Creek watershed boundary outlined in yellow. Here's some recent aerial photography of the property, the topography, resource protection area, FEMA floodplain, and site plan. The total lot size of this property is 1.51 acres, of which 77% is located within the RPA. Watershed staff were included in the review of a building permit application for a proposed deck replacement. When a site visit was conducted in March of 2025, the property owner advised staff they had been unaware that a building permit or Chesapeake Bay preservation exception request would be required for the construction of the deck and other accessory structures recently constructed within the RPA. Based on aerial imagery, recent real estate listing photos, and the site plan submitted for the 2003 emergency wetland permit under permit numbers W-24-03 and VMRC 2003-2304 for the replacement of the seawall on site, staff was able to determine that most of the existing accessory structures were constructed prior to the revisions to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 2004. The applicants are seeking after-the-fact approval to replace and expand a pre-existing deck, retaining wall, driveway, and installation of a fire pit. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 653 square feet of increased impervious. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 2 planting units. Due to this being an after-the-fact request, double mitigation is required for the completed structures, specifically the driveway expansion and the fire pit. The incomplete structures will require standard mitigation. Thus, 3 planting units are required. The applicants have provided a mitigation plan equaling 3 planting units, 5 canopy trees, 1 understory tree, and 15 shrubs, therefore meeting the county mitigation requirements. So this is a site plan to demonstrate the existing conditions prior to the current owner's purchase of the home. You can see here the 100-foot RPA buffer and the 50-foot. This is the pre-existing deck in question that was removed and they are in the process of constructing. This is the existing retaining wall as it existed at the time of purchase in 2023. The driveway expansion to this section prior to some remediation in the existing dwelling. This is the site plan as the property exists today. They are in the process of constructing this deck and they stopped to apply for a building permit when they realized they needed one. Upon inspection, the retaining wall expansion was also discovered the fire pit, and the driveway expansion. This is their proposed mitigation in the form of 5 canopy trees, 1 understory tree, and 15 shrubs. And this was a photo taken, I believe, in 2023 by the realtor. Here you can see the previously existing retaining wall in these sections here, the 2 decks, and the walkway. Another aerial photo showing that same retaining wall and other construction. And this is the current condition of the property, the unfinished deck, and retaining wall coming around the side, and again coming around to the front or the back. Another shot from this angle, and then you can see the footers for the staircase that will be connected to the deck, the new section of the retaining wall, the fire pit, and then the driveway expansion and retaining walls here. Another shot. And then this is down the slope to show you the retaining walls for that driveway expansion. Staff has evaluated the application and exception requests for the replacement and expansion of a deck, retaining wall, driveway, and installation of a fire pit. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the replacement and expansion of a deck, retaining wall, driveway, and the installation of a fire pit are considered accessory in nature. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions, which you have before you. Staff has reviewed the application and exception requests and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be minor for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval of this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. The applicants must submit a surety of $2,250 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plan equaling 5 canopy trees, 1 understory tree, and 15 shrubs. This exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by June 11th, 2026, and written requests for an extension to an exception request must be submitted to the SRP division no later than April 30th, 2026, 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Any questions for Amanda? Could you do me a favor and go back to the aerial image or oblique, whichever? That one. Just wanted to frame. I'll move forward to the deck under construction. Keep going. All right. Thank you very much. With that, I will open the public hearing. Would the applicant or their agent care to address the board?
The board. Good evening. I'm Chris Kylitz, 126 4 Mile Tree. I've learned a lot about this process through the Watershed Planning Group, and these guys have been great. I had a neighbor come over and help and said, you should probably be applying for permits for this. And as soon as I did that, this is a couple months ago, 2.5 months ago, went ahead and stopped all activity. And since then, I've been working with Watershed Planning and the whole group over here. But learned a lot. I think that we've got a pretty good plan to kind of mitigate it. Some of the other building that was taking place before that was part of the agreement when we bought the house, because the driveway that was on the left-hand side was falling down and kind of starting to fall into the ravine. And so part of our agreement with the house was money to fix that. And we got started right away, just moved from California and just got started right away with it. So learned a lot from it. I think we got a pretty solid mitigation plan and process, and hopefully take that in consideration for your decisions. Any questions that you guys have at all, happy to answer.
Questions? Thank you very much. Would anybody else care to address the board? I will pull this back for board discussion.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with the staff's recommendation to approve this. I would support this application.
Any other comments? With that, I'll close the public hearing. Would someone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case number CBPA 25-0034.
Mr. Wilson?
Motion is to adopt. Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Ms. Bowie?
Yes.
Mr. Roadley?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Next item on the agenda is CBPA 25-0048 at 152 Mid-Ocean.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Amanda Frazier, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 25-0048. Mr. Chase Grogg of Landtech Resources Incorporated has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Mr. Jason and Ms. Jessica Smith for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a playground located at 152 Mid-Ocean within the Fords Colony subdivision and the Powhatan Creek watershed. The parcel was platted in 1997 after the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. Here is the subject parcel in question, outlined in blue, and the boundary of the Powhatan Creek watershed boundary outlined in yellow. A closer aerial photo of the property, topography, RPA. The total lot size of this property is 1.29 acres, of which 45% is located within the RPA. The applicants are proposing to construct a playground behind the house. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 252 square feet of impacts to the landward 50-foot RPA. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 1 unit of mitigation, 1 canopy tree, 2 understory trees, and 3 shrubs. The applicants have submitted a mitigation plan equaling 1 planting unit in the form of 11 shrubs, therefore satisfying the county's mitigation requirements. So here is the submitted site plan and mitigation plan. Here you can see the RPA buffer, the conservation easement here, and the proposed playground and mitigation. Here is a picture from the site. These stakes on the outer edges are marking the boundaries. This stake here is marking the RPA, and I believe it curves around towards this flag here. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a playground. This application meets the ordinance conditions of sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of a playground is considered accessory in nature. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions, which you have before you. Staff has received the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be minor for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. The applicants must submit a surety in the form of $1,000 acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plan equaling 1 planting unit, 11 shrubs. This exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by June 11th, 2026, and written requests for an extension to an exception must be submitted to the SRP division no later than April 30th, 2026, 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. And I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Any questions for staff? Thank you. I will open the public hearing. Mr. Grogg.
Good evening, members of the board. Chase Grogg with Landtech Resources located at 205 Bullifonts Boulevard, Suite E, Williamsburg, Virginia. Thank you, staff, for your presentation. I'm here tonight representing Mr. and Mrs. Jessica Smith for the proposed placement of a play structure. The proposed placement of the structure was picked due to it being the flattest spot in the rear of the property. Ford's Colony requires play structures to be placed in the rear of the lot, which limits our places that we could put the structure. It is also located where the least amount of underbrush needed to be removed. As I'm sure you can visualize, this structure is a standard backyard play structure that will be surrounded by mulch. So 2 swings with a little climbing area. So though the area is being considered as impervious for this proposal, it's going to be mulch with a surrounding wood border and small wall on the low side. As staff pointed out, the required plantings for this impact have been proposed and will be planted downhill of the proposed minor impact. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Mr. Grog? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would anybody else care to address this matter? Hearing none, I'll pull it back to the board for discussion. Fairly minor project.
Seems straightforward.
With that, I'll close the public hearing. Would anybody care to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board, case number CBPA-25-0048 at 152 Mid-Ocean, to let the children play.
Mr. Wilson?
Motion is to adopt. Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. Rodley.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Next item on the agenda is CBPA 25-0049 at 4432 Landfall Drive.
Chair, members of the board, Emily Grogine, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 25-0049 at 4432 Landfall Drive. Mr. Chase Grog of Land Tech Resources Incorporated has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a pool and deck located at 4432 Landfall Drive within the Landfall Jamestown subdivision and the Powhatan Creek watershed. You can see that Powhatan Creek watershed boundary outlined in yellow here with the parcel in question outlined in blue. Just a closer look of that parcel in question, along with topography, current RPA buffer, current conservation easement, and FEMA floodplain. The total lot size of this property is an acre, of which 55% is located within the RPA. The applicant is proposing to construct a pool within the RPA, and the deck in question is existing, but we're bringing it into compliance with this presentation. The total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 149 square feet of new impervious impacts within the landward 50-foot RPA. The deck is currently existing and was built after the home was constructed. At the time of the deck's construction, a new wetland delineation was not required. Therefore, the deck was not considered to be in the RPA buffer at that time. Staff required a new delineation with this current proposal for the pool, which resulted in a change in the wetlands and therefore a change in the RPA buffer. The 59 square feet of encroachment by the deck has been included on this application as it is considered non-conforming and is being brought into compliance. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 1/2 planting unit or 6 shrubs. The applicant has submitted a mitigation plan showing 2 canopy trees and 21 shrubs, which exceeds mitigation requirements. We have, just for context, part of this proposal does exist within that existing conservation easement, but part of the approval requirements that we are proposing include a deed of exchange for natural open space. So in red here is the area that's going to be removed from the existing conservation easement and then relocated into areas in green on the property here and here. So that is why the line is currently drawn like this, although that doesn't match with what's in GIS currently. We have the RPA buffer, 100 foot right here, and as you can see, that's the amount of encroachment by that pool proposal in purple, along with those proposed mitigation plantings and the wetland line that RPA buffer is now based on. Some current site photos, just kind of showing where that proposed conservation easement swap is to be placed to the left here. Just kind of moving along, you can start to see some of that existing deck and the location or proposed area of that pool. Kind of moving closer to show you that existing deck here where part is to be removed, I believe, in place of that pool. And then just a shot looking back down the other way where that pool is going to be proposed location-wise along with the existing deck. And then just a shot kind of that conservation easement that we will require to be replanted. And then just another shot of kind of where that outer or furthest extent of RPA impacts by that pool will be. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a pool and deck. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of a pool and deck are considered accessory in nature. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions outlined in front of you. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be minor for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this application, excuse me, recommends approval for this exception request, but if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. The applicant must submit a surety of $500 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plan equaling 2 canopy trees and 21 shrubs. The applicant must replant the conservation easement, and the applicant must submit a deed of exchange for natural open space prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant must record an affidavit in the Williamsburg-James City County Courthouse prior to the issuance of a building permit, and this exception request approval will become null and void if construction is not begun by June 11th, 2026. And written requests for an extension to an exception must be submitted to the SRP division no later than April 30th, 2026, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Any questions for Ms. Grosjean? Thank you very much. Would the applicant or their agent care to address the board? Mr. Grog, public hearing is open.
Good evening. Again, members of the board, Chase Grog with Land Tech Resources, 205 Bullifunds Boulevard, Williamsburg, Virginia. Thank you, staff, for your presentation. As described by staff's presentation, this project proposes a very low impact to the RPA. The area we have chosen for the pool will require no additional clearing of anything on the lot, and grading will be minimal due to the existing flat topography of the lot. The existing deck on the back of the house is going to be reworked as well, pending approval of this application. The main reason our client has submitted this request is due to the fact that landfall at Jamestown, the subdivision, does not have a community pool. In the neighborhood, there is one other pool in the rear of a lot that already fits the same criteria as we are proposing tonight. That criteria is in reference to size of pool and proximity to the conservation easement and RPA. Since the area behind the pool is already lacking in natural vegetation, we've taken the opportunity to propose double the required mitigation. With the plants being located behind the proposed pool, this will allow for a natural filter strip for any runoff due to the flat topography of the yard. As part of this project, we also had a current wetland delineation performed, which, as staff mentioned, added more of the already constructed deck into the RPA. Our mitigation more than covers that impact as well. And the first image you saw from staff is we've already prepared the exhibit for the deed of easement exchange, so we know the areas will work. And so we just need to finalize the paperwork with staff and then get that recorded. Based on staff recommending approval, as well as the information I've provided, we would request that the board recommend approval for the project. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Grog?
Not that it has any bearing on this case, but this is Ford's Colony?
Not for its
Oh.
colony. Landfall at Jamestown,
Oh, okay.
off of Jamestown Road, just before you get to Jamestown Island, basically. It's one of the last neighborhoods on the left.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Grog.
Thank you.
Would anybody else care to address the board on this matter? Hearing none, I'll bring it back for discussion.
This seems like a reasonable proposal to me. I would be in support of this project.
I would agree. With that, I will close the public hearing. Matter is before the board. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case number CBPA 250049.
Mr. Wilson,
Motion is to adopt. Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Ms. Bowie?
Yes.
Mr. Roadley?
yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Next item on the agenda is CBPA 25-0047 at 7851 Pocahontas Trail.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Emily Grosjean, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 25-0047 at 7851 Pocahontas Trail. Mr. Anthony Lubier of VHB Incorporated has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment, LLC, for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the pedestrian bridge and related impacts for new construction located at 7851 Pocahontas Trail within the Skiffs Creek watershed. The property is otherwise known as Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, and the parcel was replatted in 2009 after the revisions to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 2004. You can see that subject parcel, obviously a very large one outlined in blue, along with that Skiffs Creek watershed boundary in yellow here. I'm going to zoom in further for the rest of these aerial images, just to show the specific area of the park that we're talking about. So moving in here, this is the area of the proposed work, along with the existing topography. As you can see, it's fairly steep, along with the current resource protection area, and then the site plan for the proposal. The total lot size of this property is 383.07 acres, of which 39% is located within the RPA. The applicant is proposing to install a pedestrian bridge and related impacts to the RPA with other new construction. Total impacts associated with this proposal equate to 9,074 square feet to the 50-foot landward, 1,493 square feet to the 50-foot seaward, for a total of 10,567 square feet to the RPA. Just to be clear, these impacts that I just listed are the permanent impacts to the RPA. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 26 planting units, or 26 canopy trees, 52 understory trees, and 78 shrubs. The current proposed site plan, as you can see, there's a current pipeline easement here, but we have that 100-foot buffer in red here, and then the 50-foot. The green impacts are those proposed impervious impacts with the pedestrian bridge and walkway here. Because it's only showing kind of what's in the RPA now, it'll kind of snake in and out of the RPA, and is always subject to change depending on what the applicant chooses to do at the site plan stage. It could end up reducing impacts. Some current site photographs just kind of showing that extent of the impacts, with these pink flags here, kind of starting right and going left. This flag here indicates exactly, looking straight down, where that pedestrian bridge is going to go. As you can see, there's a pretty steep drop to that ravine. And then kind of moving leftward again, one of those pink flags, and just again showing the slope and current topography of the area of proposed work. And then kind of showing further, again, that slope and the extent of things. Very steep. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the pedestrian bridge and related impacts for new construction. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because a pedestrian bridge and impacts from other construction cannot be approved administratively. The board may grant exceptions to sections 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions outlined before you. And staff has reviewed the application and exception requests and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be major for the proposed development. If the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. The applicant must submit a mitigation plan equal to 13 planting units, or 13 canopy trees, 26 understory trees, and 39 shrubs. The applicant must submit a surety of $6,500 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee that mitigation plan equaling 13 planting units. The applicant must make a payment equal to $6,500 into the County Chesapeake Bay Mitigation Fund in lieu of the remaining 13 planting units. This exception request approval will become null and void if construction is not begun by June 11th, 2027. And written request for an extension to an exception must be submitted to the SRP division no later than April 30th, 2027, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Go back to the site plan, please. You can, there you go. Are the areas towards the bottom of the image in green walkway as well?
Yes, I believe so.
And the temporary impacts, I assume, are associated with grading, or?
That's correct. Those are outlined in this brown color, as well as orange, but the orange is more specifically for the temporary impacts to the seaward 50.
I wasn't able to tell with the photographs, but I would imagine, given the nature of the enterprise on this property, that these are fairly wide walkways and tree clearing will be required.
Yes.
Any other questions for staff? I will ask, the large hatched area where the bridge is proposed, it's noted as temporary. Is that all chasing grade from a grading standpoint?
The hatching within that kind of colored area does indicate steep slope impacts, if that answers your question.
What is the nature of those impacts?
I'm going to defer that to the applicant.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, I'll open the public hearing. Would anybody care to address the board on this matter? Welcome.
Tony Levier, for VHB, I'm representing Busch Gardens.
Please state your address just for the record.
Address is 351 McClaw Circle in Williamsburg. Just to answer your question, first question, we will be trying to meander around any of the larger diameter trees to the maximum extent possible. And the expanse of the impacts in the RPA for the pedestrian bridge are really just to provide a construction access road down that slope, because it's so steep, we need to bench the slope back quite a bit just to get access. It's a 200-foot span, so we need a column constructed in the middle of the ravine. There isn't any feasible way to erect a 200-foot long bridge and pick it with a crane and drop it into place, so we need to have at least one column in the middle, and that access to build that column is why we have such large impacts.
So is that the only column under it other than the abutments?
Yeah, that little circle shown in the middle, will probably likely be on the right side of the stream, but we're likely to have one large column in the middle of the bridge.
So the opportunity for top-down construction doesn't really exist here.
Right. I will say that in addition, a lot of the existing slopes on the east side of the stream are showing signs of erosion, so this will give us a chance to kind of clean up those slopes, bench them back, and restabilize. And the impacts as you get closer to the pipeline easement may not necessarily be ground disturbance, but that's mostly to clear the trees and cut them down to the stumps so we can swing the bridge over the pipeline easement to install it with the crane.
Oh, it's a prefab bridge.
Yeah.
And what's the purpose of the wall?
Access. The park would like to do a new development in this area because it's the largest undeveloped portion of it that is on the developed part of the parcel. And we've exhausted every other option for access to the site. The problem is the Pompeii building really goes from top of slope to top of slope and blocks any access down to this area. We looked at options of going around the sides of it. That would still be a pretty extensive amount of RPA and steep slope impact. And going through the building isn't really a great option because they currently use it for hollow screen mazes and maintenance access to get down to the lift for Loch Ness. So from an operation standpoint, it's not very feasible. And additionally, in the future, if it were ever to be decommissioned as a attraction, we would lose the access to this development. And then we would be back here again asking you to build a bridge.
Could you describe the stabilization of the temporary impacts and how you hope to achieve that?
Typically in the park, we spec engineered matting, not just the standard VDOT fat matting. Usually coconut fiber or Futera matting is used. Something that's going to hold in those slopes better than just the jute matting.
And you replant it with seed, or do you actually put plantings on there?
It's usually a mixture of both.
I'm just curious, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Would anybody else care to address the board on this matter? I will bring it back to the board for discussion. I know this is a fairly large impact area relative to a lot of our applications. A lot of it is temporary in nature, will be restored. Given the design of the bridge, it kind of eliminates the option of top-down construction. So And given that the slopes may be unstable to begin with, maybe this will help address that future erosion. I don't have a particular issue with this approach.
I concur with that. I don't see any issues that are glaring to me.
Anybody
Sure,
else?
Oh, sorry. I'm just concerned about the scope of the project, the size of the disturbance, whether it's temporary or permanent. I do have a concern about that.
Um, Anybody care to discuss that further?
Chair, I would agree with your previous comments, and I would be in support of this application.
Very good. I will close the public hearing. Would someone like to make a recommendation?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case number CBPA-25-0047 at 7851 Pocahontas Trail.
Mr. Wilson,
Motion is to adopt. Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Ms. Bowie,
No,
Mr. Roadley.
yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
Next, that is all the items on our public hearings agenda. Next item is board considerations, CBPA 24-0074 extension request. And I am going to pass the gavel to the vice chair, Ms. Bowie. I am conflicted on this project as our firm worked on it.
Chair, members of the board, Emily Grogine, watershed planner. Mr. Chase Grogg is requesting a 10-year extension to CBPA 24-0074, originally granted on August 14th, 2024. Staff concurs with this request with the stipulation that all permit conditions except for the expiration date be reauthorized and that the new date of expiration be August 14th, 2035.
extension date.
That extension date would be August 14th, 2035. Does anyone have any other questions?
Just curious, 10 years?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Normally it's like 1 or 2. What's the reason for 10?
I will let Mr. Grogg explain that.
I might not be around.
Hope you are.
Evening again, members. Chase Grog, Land Tech Resources, 205 Bullifonts Boulevard, Suite E, Williamsburg, Virginia. I'm here representing Governor's Land for the proposed 10-year extension to the exception they received last year. I figured there may be a question or two due to the length compared to the normal extension request you get. I know normally with extensions, there's no presentation to go along with the request, but due to the length of time, I wanted to provide some context. Along with the JCC approval for work within the RPA and associated land disturbance, Governor's Land also received other associated permits for the dredge work. That permit is valid for 10 years, which is why we're requesting the JCC approval to coincide with that permit. As some of you may remember from my presentation last year, I brought the same satellite imagery history for this go around, along with some new photos from just after they completed dredging and as from a couple days ago. So going back to 1937, this area used to be a farm field because it was up on the high ground. Into 1986, still that farm field. 1996, just after they had recently did the first dredging, installed the berm around the outside and the outlet structure that's still there to today. This was 2002, kind of showing its first post-dredging outcome. 2011, it had been dredged in 2007, 2008 outcome or time frame. So 2011 still kind of showing that it just was returning to a field and being maintained that way. And then 2023 prior to the most recent dredging activity. Again, showing the topography of it. It's basically a giant basin surrounded by berm that in the back is upwards of 6 and 8 feet tall. It's a little shallower up here, but well contained. So when dredge materials drop there, it all stays within the facility. This is were current photos, again, from last year's hearing to what it kind of looked more up close. This is the first photo from post-dredging. So when they dredged it, excavator along here with a barge that received the dirt. Main point of this photo is you basically can tell that, or you can't tell they were there. It looks like normal grass. They did a great job of ensuring, that was returned to a good condition. This is a photo from back in March. Basically, their access came through the boat storage area, and they created a couple trenches where they were driving in along the side here, but dropping the material with kind of a berm inside of the other berm to help keep all of the water internal to the site. That's a photo looking down, again, still in March, looking down. This is the only outlet structure that would allow any, it would have to be a pretty good rainstorm, but there was silt fence and the berm placed there to protect that structure. That's a photo from the outlet pipe. As you'll see, though a lot of dredge material was dropped into this site, not any of it exited through the outfall pipe. So that facility handled it very well and functioned exactly as it did when it was first used. I guess the other, is this not the other? Oh, okay, then my photos didn't make it. The photos from a couple days ago would reflect that it looks very much like what it did in the 2024 photos when you saw me last year. It is very much fully grassed again. A couple of the areas where the berms were around where there's water, there's nothing growing there, but the site has very much restabilized. By granting this exception request, it would allow Governor's Land the flexibility it needs to continue to maintain this dredge material management area as it has for almost 30 years. At the moment, there's no forecasted future dredge year, and since the previous gap in dredging was 15 years, it is unlikely dredging will happen in the next 10 years. There is a possibility during this lull in dredging that material would be removed from the facility in preparation for future activity, or if a bad storm were to hit impacting the channel to the marina, another dredging operation would need to take place. No matter what the future holds, though, I believe the photos from the most recent dredging reflect how a long-lasting and maintained facility operated as originally intended and prevented any sediment from leaving the site and holding area. Happy to answer any other questions you may have, but I hope that answered your one question. Thank you.
Does anyone else care to speak? With that, we'll consider the extension request for CBPA 240074.
Madam Chair, I think this dredging area or this area has been responsibly maintained over the years and clearly effective, so I would be in support of the 10-year extension.
A motion, please.
I would make a motion to grant the extension request for CBPA-24-0074.
Motion is to grant the extension request. Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Ms. Bowie?
Yes.
Extension request is granted.
Thank you,
Are
Ms.
there
Bowie.
any, oh, excuse me,
No,
any matters of special privilege to come before the board? And can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
so moved.